Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about the story Zlateh the Goat. Zlateh the Goat. It is there in your Zeitgeist, in the book Zeitgeist, Zlateh the Goat, which is written by the Yiddish writer Isaac Bashevis Singer. This comes in your second module, Sustainable Environment, the third chapter in the second module of Zeitgeist. Okay, so Isaac Bashevis Singer is a Polish-born Jewish-American writer who wrote and published mostly in Yiddish language. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1978, which is, of course, a very proud moment for the life of Poland, or for the life of Isaac Bashevis, in the sense that he had tried, or he had through this Nobel Prize, he had brought Yiddish language and literature to the forefront of the contemporary of the whole of the literary scenario. Now, probably it is because of this reason that Yiddish language got much of a recognition. So we can say that Isaac Bashevis Singer is a leading figure in the Yiddish literary movement. He was born in Poland, and of course he's an American writer, in the sense that later on he migrated to America during this Nazi reign and all. He was quite afraid of the threat that it posed amongst the Jewish culture, as a result of which he migrated to America. And of course, once he got migrated to America, he had to leave behind his legal wife and his child Israel, and yeah, he did migrate to America, which was, of course, a very crucial turn in his life, because in America he got published in the American Yiddish literary magazines and all. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Now, he was a Polish-born American writer. He wrote novels, he wrote short stories, he did write essays. Of course, almost all of them are written in Yiddish language. And he was this Bashevis Singer. How did he get that name? He was born Isaac Singer, actually, and his mother, whose name is Bathsheba, he wanted his mother's name to get added to his name. That is how he took his pen name as Bashevis. So that is how he became Isaac Bashevis Singer. And for his profile, for his personal life, he got educated in Jewish schools, and he was enrolled in rabbinical seminary. And the street in which Singer was born and grew up and got educated was very much an impoverished area in the Jewish quarter of Warsaw. And his father was a Hasidic scholar who did serve as a rabbi, kind of a judge, kind of a religious authority, and a spiritual leader for the Jewish community. His parents, of course, wanted him to pursue his studies and become a rabbi as well. But like his siblings, he was also not interested in that. Instead, he wanted to write and he wanted to pursue literature as such. So he did receive this traditional Jewish education as such at Warsaw Rabbinical Seminary. And it was later on that he understood his disinterestedness in this particular area, and he quit. He did quit. And in Warsaw, he also obtained a job as a proofreader for Yiddish literary magazine. He was quite interested in writing from a very early age onward. So he first did try to write in Hebrew. But then later on he did switch himself to Yiddish. And of course, you're familiar with this World War First and all. So during this World War First, he had lots and lots of hardships to face, as a result of which his family got split up. And it was in 1935 or so almost 4 or 5 years before Nazi invasion, Singer did immigrate or migrate himself from Poland to United States. He was, of course, very much aware and very much fearful of the threat threat which was there in Germany. And of course, as I told you before, his migration resulted in a family split, in the sense that he had to leave his wife Runia Ponch and his son Israel Zamir, and they actually migrated to Moscow, and then they went to Palestine. And yeah, of course, they did meet after 20 plus years later on. So Singer, as such, he did get settled in New York City, where he took up a job as a journalist and columnist for the Jewish Daily Forward. Forward, that is the title of Jewish Daily, and he became a columnist, writer, a journalist there. It is a newspaper which is published exclusively in Yiddish language. And we could find that most of his novels that he wrote got serialized in this particular daily, and that is how that was, of course, a promising start for him. And his debut, it was in 1925 actually, which he did publish from when he was in Warsaw. The story titled In Old Age. And his first novel is Satan in Gore. Everything is published in Yiddish language, and this Satan in Gore was published in installments, as series. Okay, and he did after getting migrated to United States, he did sign articles. He did have lots and lots of pseudonyms as such, because he wrote under the pseudonym Washevsky or D. Segel, etc. Bashevis as well. And most of his works got translated into lots and lots of languages. He also translated most of the works from Hebrew, Polish, German, etc. into Yiddish language. So if we talk about his important works, The Family Musket, that is his important novels as such, The Family Musket, The Magician of Lublin, then The Manor and the Estate, The Manor, which was published in 1967, and The Estate, which was published in 1969. Then you have Enemies, a Love Story, in 1972. Then for his short stories, he has written some popular collections of short stories as well. The Spinoza of Market Street. Then you have this Zlateh the Goat and Other Stories. Then you have Short Friday, A Crown of Feathers. Crown of Feathers actually bagged this National Book Award as well. So he had written quite a number of short stories and novels as well. So many articles and essays also. After he got divorced with his first wife, Rachel, Singer married Alma Heinemann, who was a refugee from Germany. And they did have quite a sort of a chemistry between them, because they were quite vegetarians, and they did dedicate themselves onto nature. That was kind of life that they led. So when we talk about his works, when we talk about the peculiarity or the speciality of his works, we see that most of the time he talks about Jewish life. He tries to reflect the Jewish life in most of his works, especially the Jewish life in Poland as well as in USA. Most of the works are set in Poland as such, because he was born and brought up there. And he also, being a witness to this Nazi domination, he had to witness and experience the horrors of Holocaust. that too got reflected in most of his works. So we can say that his works reflects the lost Jewish life, the Polish ghettos, small villages, childhood, nostalgia, memories. And he wrote quite a number of stories for children as well. Singer, as I told you before, Singer has been translated into lots and lots of other languages as well. His Yiddish works got translated into Hebrew, French, Italian, German, Dutch, Finnish, etc. So we could say that, in short, we could say that we are actually talking about a writer who is a kind of a legendary figure in the Yiddish language, or legendary Yiddish writers of our time. Now, talking about Zlateh the Goat, that is actually the titular work of Singer's 1966 publication, Zlateh the Goat and Other Short Stories, which was published in the year 1966. This is a very beautiful story about a small child, about the relationship between a child and a god. Or we can say this is a story which talks about the bondage that is there, the sort of a bond that is there between the bond which is there between human beings and animals, or which ought to be there between human beings and animals. Most of the time what happens is we treat animals as something to feed on, right? We treat animals as something to make us live, but it's more than that. It's more than this is a story which talks about climate. It talks about the relationship between animals and human beings. It talks about the attachment that we human beings should have towards nature. The sort of climate described is really ironic, in the sense that not ironic, real actually, in the sense that we see climate changing all of a sudden. We see lots and lots of things are there. So we also the story also talks about the vulnerability of life of the common common Jewish people who had to live they have to they live, they're very common people. They live on a daily basis, right? In the sense that they get something and they earn something and they live it. And all of a sudden what happens is what happens when the climate changes. The survival of the common people would be at stake, because most of them are dependent on agriculture. So we can say that, of course, this whole story talks about friendship, talks about relationships as such, talks about animals, talks about human beings, talks about climate, the relationship between ecology and human beings, all these things. I'll just read it out and we'll just try to explain it. So the text goes like this. At Hanukkah time, the road from the village to the town is usually covered with snow, but this year the winter had been a mild one. Hanukkah had almost come, yet a little snow had fallen. The sun shone most of the time. The peasants had complained that because of the dry weather, there would be poor harvest of winter grain. New grass sprouted, and the peasants sent their cattle out to pasture. For Reuben the furrier, it was a very bad year, and after a long hesitation, he decided to sell Zlateh the Goat. She was very old and gave little milk. Feivel, the town butcher, had offered 8 gulden for her. Such a sum would buy Hanukkah candles, potatoes, and oil for pancakes, gifts for the children, the other holiday necessaries for the house. Reuben told his oldest boy, Aaron, to take the goat to town. So the beginning of the story goes like this. It is Hanukkah time. Hanukkah is actually a Jewish festival, which is a festival of lights. And at this particular time, now the whole story talks about a family, a Jewish family, a very poor family who lives on selling furs. And Reuben, that is not the protagonist. Aaron is actually the protagonist. Reuben is the father of Aaron. He is a furrier. He sells fur, and that is how the family lives. Now, this is Hanukkah time, and usually what happens is during this time the whole of the area would be covered by snow. And snow is a very important symbol, or very important factor, a very important character as such in this particular story. In the sense that at the very beginning we do not see snow. It is much of a less snow during that year. Winter is very mild. As a result of which, what happens is nobody needs a fur, right? Because it's no more snowy, because it's no more wintry, it's no more cold. So you do not need a fur to cover yourself up. So as a result of which, what happened is that Reuben the furrier really did have a bad time, because he cannot sell fur anymore. So he cannot make a livelihood, because he was making a livelihood by that. He was a furrier. So what happened is, most of the time sun did shine. Usually sun would not be there during this time, and they really do have a very good holiday time, festival time. But now it's not so. Now Hanukkah is there, winter is not there, so it's quite a problem for these people, for this family as such. Now Reuben, as he says, he does have a very bad year, and they do not have any other option except to sell Zlateh the Goat. They do have lots and lots of goats, cattle. So what they did was that what he decided is that I have to sell Zlateh the Goat, because I have no other option. I have to feed my family. I have to arrange for the festival, because Hanukkah is a festival which we need to celebrate. So we do not have enough money with us. So Zlateh, why Zlateh? Zlateh because Zlateh is old. Zlateh would fetch no more milk, because Zlateh does not give more milk now. So at the very beginning we see there is no snow and there is no milk. Okay, so he has decided to sell Zlateh to Feivel, who is a town butcher, who had of course offered 8 gulden for her. That would of course be enough to fetch or to buy some Hanukkah candles, potatoes, all these sorts of things. Aaron understood what taking the goat to Feivel meant, but he had to obey his father. Leah, his mother, wiped the tears from his eyes when she heard the news. Aaron's younger sisters, Anna and Miriam, cried loudly. Aaron put on his quilted jacket and a cap with earmuffs, bound a rope around Zlateh's neck, and took along 2 slices of bread with cheese to eat on the road. Aaron was supposed to deliver the goat by evening, spend the night at the butcher's, and return the next day with the money. Now that was what was decided. Aaron, who was the eldest son, was supposed to take the goat to Feivel. Of course, he's a butcher, so you know what happens when a goat is being taken to a butcher's shop. But then they did not have any other option except to sell Zlateh. Everyone was unhappy because they had that sort of a bond with Zlateh. His mother was quite unhappy. Leah, she was quite unhappy. Aaron's younger sisters, Anna and Miriam, they really cried a lot. Aaron couldn't cry. Aaron was really unhappy. He couldn't do this, but then he had to. He put on a quilted jacket, a cap, earmuffs, and he took some slices of bread and cheese. He was supposed to deliver the goat by the evening to the butcher's and return the next day with the money. While the family said goodbye to the goat and Aaron placed the rope around the neck, Zlateh stood as patiently and good-naturedly as ever. She licked Reuben's hand. She shook her small white beard. Zlateh trusted human beings. She knew that they always fed her and never did her any harm. Zlateh the Goat is also another character, a very important character in this particular story. A god who was not cheated by human beings, because she was actually living in a very beautiful, very affectionate house. The whole of the family members there had showered all sorts of love and affection towards Zlateh till now. Of course, when you trust somebody so much, what happens is you trust them blindly, right? So you do not know, sometimes you do not know where they are taking you. Sometimes it's like they're taking to you to get killed. That is what is happening in Zlateh's case. He, or the god, trusted the family so much, and it was so patient, so good natured. Yeah, because the human beings did not do any harm to him. When Aaron brought her out on the road, yeah, it's her, okay. When Aaron brought her out on the road to the town, she seemed somewhat astonished. She had never been led in that direction before. Now she was quite confused. See, this is not my regular way, regular path. Where is he taking me? But then he did not doubt, because he was never, he did not get any chance till now to doubt his master. And she looked back at him questioningly, as if to say, where are you taking me? But after a while, she seemed to come to a conclusion that a god shouldn't ask such questions. Still, the road was quite different. They passed new fields, pastures, huts with thatched roofs. Here and there, a dog barked and came running after them, but Aaron chased it away with his stick. The sun was shining when Aaron left the village. Suddenly, the weather changed. See, this is how climate is. Climate changes all of a sudden. When he left the house, the sun was okay, the sun was shining. Winter was not there, it was not cold at all. But then all of a sudden, once he left the village, what happened is the weather began to change. A large black cloud and with bluish center appeared in the east and spread itself rapidly over the sky. A cold wind blew in with it. The crows flew low, croaking. At first it looked as if it would rain, but instead it began to hail as in summer. It was early in the day, but it became dark as dusk. After a while, the hail turned to snow. So all of a sudden, the climate changed. It began to snow. It began to be very cold. Like winter has come. It's dark. It's cold. In his 12 years, Aaron had seen all kinds of weather, but he had never experienced a snow like this one. See, some moments before it was full of sunny day, right? All of a sudden the weather changed, the climate got changed, and you just, it's the weather which changes. Yeah, the weather got changed, and he has never seen a snow like this before. It was so dense, it shut out the light of the day. In a short time, their path was completely covered. The wind became as cold as ice. The road to the town was narrow and winding. Aaron no longer knew where he was. He could not see through the snow. The cold soon penetrated his quilted jacket. Now comes the twist of the story. The moment he left the village, the weather got changed. It began to snow. It began to be so cold, that so snowy, that so windy that he couldn't see the way. He couldn't see through the snow, and the cold began to get penetrated through his quilted jacket. At first, Zlateh didn't seem to mind the change in weather. She too was 12 years old and knew what winter meant. So both Zlateh and Aaron both are of the same age. So kind of siblings, right? But when her legs sank deeper and deeper into the snow, she began to turn her head and look at Aaron in wonderment. What's happening? Zlateh was also quite confused. Her mild eyes seemed to ask, why are we out in such a storm? That is what he did not, what she did not know. Why are we out? Aaron hoped that a peasant would come along with his cart, but nobody passed by. He did not see anybody. There was nobody there to help him. It was full of snow around. He couldn't see. Everything was kind of dim. He couldn't see anything. Nothing was visible. The snow grew thicker, failing to the ground in large whirling flakes. Beneath it, Aaron's boots touched the softness of a plowed field. He realized that he was no longer on the road. He had gone astray. He could no longer figure out which was east and which was west, which way was the town, which was the village. The wind whistled, howled, whirled, the snow in eddies. It looked as if white imps were playing tag on the fields. A white dust rose above the ground. Zlateh stopped. She could walk no more. Stubbornly, she anchored her cleft hooves in the earth and bleated as if pleading to be taken home. Icicles hung from her white hair and her horns were glazed with frost. Now this was happening. The snow was getting thicker and thicker. The wind was whistling, howling, whirling. Snow was on and on. Snow was all the time falling onto the ground in whirling flakes. Zlateh couldn't walk anymore. He was quite adamant. He was bleating. He was pleading to take him somewhere home. Aaron did not want to admit the danger, but he knew just the same that if he did not find a shelter, they would of course freeze to death. This was no ordinary storm. It was a mighty blizzard. The snowfall had reached his knees. See, the snow has almost reached his knees. His hands had turned out to be numb. He could no longer feel his toes. He choked when he breathed. His nose felt like wood and he rubbed it with snow. It was almost frozen. Every organ has got frozen. Zlateh was going on bleating. The animal is quite helpless because this human being, Aaron, cannot find a shelter. Zlateh cannot, the only thing that Zlateh could do was bleating on and on, crying on and on. Those humans in whom she had trusted so much, now she began to doubt. Probably the human beings had dragged him into some sort of a trap. Aaron began to pray to God for himself and for the innocent animal. Now here is a problem. Suddenly, what happened is, he made out the shape of a hill. He wondered what it could be. He saw something like a hill. Who had piled snow into such a huge heap? He moved towards, dragging Zlateh after him. When he came near it, he realized that it was a large haystack which the snow had blanketed. Now he found that that hilly shape was nothing more than a haystack, which was of course blanketed, covered by the snow. So what he did was that Aaron realized immediately that they were saved. And what he did was that with great effort through the snow, this village boy, he didn't know what to do. He reached out to the hay. He hollowed out a nest for himself and the goat. No matter how cold it may be outside, the hay is always warm. And it was of course food for Zlateh too. The moment she smelled it, she became contented and began to eat it. Outside, the snow was continuing. It quickly covered the passageway Aaron had dug. But a boy and an animal need to breathe, right? And there was hardly any air in their hideout. Aaron bored a kind of window, he actually dug some sort of a window through the hay and snow and carefully kept the passage clear. Now they're almost inside this haystack. Now Zlateh has plenty to eat, hay. And Aaron was also very happy in the sense that they got a shelter somehow. What happened is, of course, Zlateh has plenty to eat and she ate her fill. And probably just a moment before she had lost confidence in human beings, but now she had regained that confidence. Aaron ate 2 slices of bread and Zlateh also ate much of the hay that she could, that her udders were full. So Aaron did get enough milk too. So you see at the very beginning, you do not see any snow at all. The life of the Reuben family was at stake. They did not have any other option except to sell the goat. Now it has come a moment when leaves the village and snow comes, and it's filled with snow afterwards, and it's filled with milk as well. Okay, now what was happening is Zlateh was going on eating and Aaron was going on getting milk. So they had a very beautiful relationship. Now you see a very beautiful relationship between Zlateh and Aaron. See, through the window, Aaron could catch what was happening outside. It was full of cows there. The wind carried before it drifts of snow. It was completely dark, and you do not know when darkness came. It was like, because of the storm, because of the snow, every time is kind of darkness there. But inside this inside this haystack, they were completely okay. It was not cold at all. It was like warm. So Zlateh ate, and they see, now comes the relationship between this Zlateh and Aaron, where Aaron has, I mean, of course Aaron did love Zlateh before, but this is a bonding that would last forever. Like they began to, I mean, Aaron began to talk to Zlateh as a little sister, and Zlateh would respond with a ma sound. And Aaron did not have anybody else to talk to right now. This is a moment when Aaron gets somebody to talk to, and he talks on and on. And it's almost 3 days. And they did not know. Zlateh was eating hay. She was quite happy, and Aaron was getting milk. And they see, it is the real bond between human beings and animals, right? It is there should be a sort of a coexistence. Animals and human beings are supposed to coexist in nature. Because of animals, human beings exist, and because of human beings, animals exist. It's always a give and take. See, this is the sort of bonding that we human beings should have with nature, right? And so see, you have snow outside, you have nature. Nature does have this very dangerous phase to it, and a very cozy phase to it. So what happens is, it's almost 3 days that Zlateh and Aaron, they are in the haystack. Aaron had always loved Zlateh, but then this 3 years was really dedicated. See, like both of them, they had developed some sort of a very beautiful kinship, a relationship between each other, that they could never part. They could never get separated from each other. Now the snow was falling for 3 days, and I mean, as far as he could remember, it was almost 3 days, and Aaron had never been so far from his mother and father for for 3 or 4 days. So he was thinking about his father and mother. I mean, now what happens is, Aaron goes out on the 4th day. He goes out, and because he hears the ringing of sleigh bells, because there was a peasant who was drawing the sleigh. And he did show him the way, not to the butcher, but to his own home. Because he had, of course, promised in his own mind that I'm not going to part with Zlateh. Of course, Aaron's family and their neighbors had searched for the boy in the goat for long, but they couldn't find a trace of them. And they had, of course, imagined, or they had, of course, come to a decision that probably they are lost in storm. But and Aaron's mother, sisters, everybody were crying when Aaron returned. They were like shocked. Suddenly, one of the neighbors, they're coming, and everybody was unhappy because they couldn't find a trace of him. And it was then that a neighbor came running to their house saying that Aaron is there. Aaron and Zlateh, they are coming up the road. So that was quite a joyous moment for the family. Now, Aaron details on the things that happened for almost 3 days. How Zlateh fed him with milk. How he existed because of Zlateh, and Zlateh existed because of me. And I'm not gonna part with him anymore. Now, everybody understood the importance of Zlateh in their family. And they were quite happy. Celebrations were there. I mean, it's like Hanukkah was more beautiful than it was before. I mean, you had money for everything, because it was snowy. The fur did get sold. I mean, he was able to sell. Reuben was able to sell the fur. So it was quite. See, you have snow coming as a character, storm coming as a character, snow, storm. All these things are giver and taker of life. You do not have snow means I mean they couldn't live. You have snow means, yeah, of course they could live. So the weather getting changed all of a sudden, the survival of human beings who actually depend, whose life of course depend on agriculture. So the relationship between human beings, the relationship between that human beings do have with animals, with each other, with nature, all these things are getting reflected in this particular story. So I hope you understood the story. You can read the story, and probably you would be able to read it in different ways. Thank you all.